Hi, I'm author Lindsey Leavitt.
And I'm author Robin Mellom, and this is the Pages Between Us project.
Hi, so today we are working on the next step of brainstorming. We started with brain mushing and now we're brain exploding. Yes, we like to do very dramatic things to brains, but that's great because it'll help your brain work. Robin today is going to share with us a presentation on the next steps of brainstorming to get all the elements of the story that you need to get this story started.
All right, and by the power of magic, we are now going to go into what's called a PowerPoint slide. Hold on. Okay, today we're going to be talking about all the steps in brainstorming. There's not one or two or three, there are 4 steps to better brainstorming. So let's get into it. Step 1. Okay, here's the first thing we want you guys to be doing. Now, you've done all the stuff that we talked about in the last video, getting all your creative energy out, coming up with all the different incredible ideas that you can. And now you're going to start going to your document and getting those bits of information down. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start making lists. Let me show you an example of what you could do with this. Now, typically when I start a story, I work on 2 things. I work with what's on the left, which is characters, and then I work with conflict on the right. Characters, they tell us who, conflict tells us what. So in order to do a brain explosion, what you want to do is just the same thing that we did before. Remember when we were doing the games where you were coming up with any kind of word association, just letting everything go. So I started to come up with some ideas for characters for a new story. So I wrote kids in middle school, zombie teenagers, gophers, unicorns, kids in the 1930s depression, aliens in the future, anything that I could possibly think of. So there's a couple of ways you guys could do this. You could either brainstorm together at the exact same time on your document, or one of you could go ahead and then the next person could kind of pipe in after that and add on to the list. So let's do that right now. So Lindsey, I want you to take a look at that list of characters. Are there any more that you could add to that list off the top of your head?
Woodland creatures, Elizabethan women, teenagers in the 1960s Midwest. Let's do ladybugs, armadillos, Spanish flu.
All right, I got all that down. Okay, so that's kind of what you do. We're just sort of pulling things out of thin air of just characters, who they are, and you might also want to add in like what time do they live in? Are they in the future? Are they in the past? Kind of what's going on in their lives. Then you get over into conflict. So conflict is what is going to happen to them, and do the exact same thing. Whatever kind of comes off the top of your head. You could even think of movies that you've seen. So I came up with a list of just stuff I could think of really quickly. Let's suppose a character is lost and they can't get back, or they've been betrayed by a friend, or they have to prove their right to save the world, or maybe they want their mother's approval. Maybe they're accused of something that you didn't do, or they want to fit in with a group. The next thing you can think of, if you want to add onto this list, is find a person who, or think of a person who, what happens to them. So let's add a few more to this list. We're going to now flip back to Lindsey and see what she can come up with off the top of her head.
I'm thinking of they want to be popular or liked. And some of these conflicts are internal and some of these are external. Most stories will have an external and an internal, but you want to just come up with your first conflict that comes into your head and start with that. So I'll also say needs to survive a really cold winter, has a sick family member, or also I love betrayal stories. Characters been lied to and how do they process that? Somebody who wants to create a very large wardrobe and win best dressed at their school.
So that is how that starts to work there. You start coming up with characters, conflicts, and what you'll start to see is that you can mix and match some of these and start getting some really cool combinations. Let's suppose you have a gopher who has been betrayed by his best friend, or maybe you've got zombie teenagers, and you kind of like what you would think of as being a typical story of survival or something. Maybe what they really want to do is just get their mom's approval. So you can start to mix and match and come up with some really cool combinations.
Or they want to build their wardrobe and have a zombie teenager fashion show.
All right, so now from this list, what you're going to be doing is you're going to pick a character, a group of characters that you're going to focus on to continue through the brainstorming process. This doesn't mean it's the final one that you're going to do in your story, but we're going to kind of work through what that's like when you pick one of these, and then you'll see if this is the one you want to work on. Now, as you're trying to figure out what conflicts your characters go through, I want to show you something real quick. There's a helpful hint on how to figure out problems that characters go through. And if you have a conflict, a problem, it's usually due to behavior. If you look at the causes of behavior, and here's where a little bit of scientific fact come in here, psychologists have done a lot of research on behaviors, and you know what? They have found that all behaviors fall into one of 4 categories. There's really only 4 reasons in the world why we do what we do, which is kind of amazing. So here are those 4 categories. First is we might behave in a certain way because we want attention. We want attention from our parents or our friends. We might do something because we want power. We want to be in charge, and we don't want someone to tell us what to do. We might do something for avoidance. We don't want to do something. We want to get out of something. We're being told we have to do something, but we don't want to do it. There's a lot of avoidance. And then there's one more, and it starts with the letter R. Last one is basically kind of like the plot of every Marvel movie you've ever seen. It's called revenge. Revenge! You got to get back for something wrong that has happened to you or your family. So you could go back to this. This will help you with your conflict when you're trying to figure out what's going on with your character. So once you figured out which one you want to play around with, here's your next step. You are going to start making what's called a mind map. So I'm going to show you the one that we started to create for unicorns. Now, in the middle, you're going to put the word unicorn or whatever character it is that you are working on. And then from there, you can start separating out. You're going to use that same brainstorming process with each of these boxes on the screen. And within that, what we'd like for you to do is write down at least 5 different choices within that. So you see how deep into the brainstorming process that we get with this? So for our unicorn, we might come up with 5 different settings of where they live. I always do what's called a trading card status, where I write down their strengths and their weaknesses. Think of it like a trading card in a game. I come up with conflict. Think about that last slide that we went through, all the different reasons why people behave the way that they do. 5 more conflicts. And obstacles, that means what's getting in their way? Are their parents getting in the way? Is it the nature getting in their way? A friend? Who's stopping them from getting whatever it is they want? What do you think about this mind map, Lindsey?
I think this is a great way to focus for certain creative styles. Robin and I would do things like this, but usually I didn't write the things down because I am auditory, so I usually had to say them out loud. So as you're setting up your Google Doc, we'll have a link for how to create your own mind map and add this to your Google Doc. But you might also find that you just want to list it down. And really, you might find that drawing pictures helps you if that's more of your creative style. You might draw a picture of a setting and then use words to describe that setting. So again, because you have already meshed your creative style together, this is one format that works really well for us, but you can revise this format, change it around to work better for the 2 of you together.
Perfect. And then what you could do is make sure you go back and determine what your creator type is. That's going to help you figure out whether something visual is going to help you out or not. And then how to support the other person and figure out what it is that they need, because maybe you need things done in a list, but they need things done visually. So you could do a combination of the 2. And there is a quiz on our website for a what kind of creator are you quiz. So head over there and check that out as well. All right, so next, here's what you're going to do. Step 3, you're now going to take it for a spin. And what that means is you're going to go out and take this information and you're going to try it out. You are going to need to think of it like putting on different costumes. When you're getting ready to go out for Halloween or something, you don't just put on one thing and run out the door. You know how you stand in front of a mirror and you try this and you try that. Do I like this? And you do all different kinds of combinations. So the way that I typically do it is I start playing around with a few different things. I write 1 page or maybe 1 paragraph and I think about point of view. Do I want my story to be first person? I, me, we. Maybe I want it to be second person, where you're talking directly to the reader and you say, you might think that, and you use the word you. Or it could be third person where you're using he, she, we, and it has a totally different feel to it. So I actually rewrite my first page in different ways, all these different points of view. Then I play with tone. And when you do tone, you might make it like dark and mysterious, or you might decide to make it really light and humorous, whatever it is that you want to do. Lindsey will make it a literary masterpiece. Who knows? And then finally, I kind of play with the style of it or the format. Is it going to be letters, chapters? Is it going to be like a graphic novel, diary entries? How that works for you. Try different things. So Lindsey, what is your style when you are writing a book? Do you do different things to sort of take it for a spin and try on different costumes?
I actually put on the costumes before I even know what the costume is a lot of the time. I usually get an idea, and the idea is usually a voice of some sort, like a character maybe talking to me. So I'll just start writing, and I usually write 5 to 10 pages before I even go through this brainstorming process. So I will do mind maps, I will do character charts, and all of these cool things we'll be teaching, but I have to figure out who I'm even talking to or who's talking to me first. A lot of times those 5 to 10 pages, sometimes even a chapter, end up getting thrown out, but that's just how I brainstorm. So the writing process, as you learn it in school and as you're learning it through these videos, there's not a set order that you necessarily have to do this. And that's what Robin's showing with these different costumes, is you can kind of go back and forth figuring out how these elements will reveal themselves at different times in different ways, and not worrying about this is the absolute right way to do it, or I've written this down in pen, and because I wrote it down on a piece of paper or in a Google Doc, it makes it absolutely what we have to do. Letting yourself treat it more like Play-Doh, where you can build something up and say, oh, I don't really like this, smush it back together, build it up again. It's not frozen. And that's part of the brainstorming and drafting process, is giving yourself permission, both of yourselves permission, to go back and forth like this. So Robin and I, we had a lot of conversations. We did a lot of mapping before we began, but I actually wrote some of the book before I sent it to her and didn't tell her, because again, that was how I brainstormed, was just to write some of it.
Oh, the truth comes out.
Ah, unicorns, they're so shiny. Look at this.
Look at this. Squirrel, no, unicorn. I think it's important to bring up that the reason why you're doing this is this. You want to get excited about what you are working on. And sometimes we can brainstorm and list and think ourselves into a little box, and then we never even get any writing done. So, and in school, sometimes they'll tell you this is how you do writing. You do this step, then you write the story, then you revise it, and then you're done. As authors, what we have found is the process is actually more of like this circle that kind of we keep circling back around until we finally come up with what it is that we really, really want to do. And it's totally fine to do that. Brainstorm, write, come back. Brainstorm, write, come back. So that leads us to number 4, which is you go back to your map.
Going back to the map, that reminds me, when Robin talks about being really excited, when we had the idea for this book, and by we, I mean Robin had the idea for the book and she gave it to me like the nice friend that she is, we had a phone call and we kind of went through this process over the phone and wrote stuff down. And by the end of the phone call, we were so excited. We just kept, the ideas were like tennis balls going back and forth. And at the end, it was like we couldn't not write the book. And if we hadn't done that work to begin with, to kind of have our energies mesh together and get each other excited, then it might not have ever gotten the speed to get finished.
Exactly. So that excitement is what's going to pull you through your project. And we want to get you on a project that you are going to start and you are going to finish. And that's what these videos are about. So once you go back to your map, from here, you can change some settings or maybe circle from here the conflicts, the settings, the obstacles that you want to work on. And then go ahead in the middle there, you'll see we open with, and I added another little box there with how are you going to start the story? You kind of need to figure out where this is all going to go, and you might come back and change it. And oftentimes I have found that once I start a story, the very first page in the very beginning of it changes completely. Does that happen to you too, Lindsey?
Yes. And what's interesting is every book is very different. So I'll think this is the way that I write a book until I write the next book. So some of the books I've written, the first chapter does not change. That stays the same. I have my first sentence. I know all of this going in. And some of it, I think it opens here. And then I realize, oh, the story that I thought was about unicorn in her bedroom is actually about zombies at a fashion show. I'm not giving up on it. And I don't know. I don't know until I spend some time with it and kind of take a walk with the idea.
Right. So then once you get this going here and you get started, you're going to feel like this a little bit. Is this a cliff ahead of me? Because now it sort of feels like this really big thing that you've sort of jumped off and you started on. So it can feel like a big thing. We are going to help you. We're going to steer you in the right direction. So if you come back to the next video, we are going to tell you what is the most important thing that you're going to have in any story. And when you do your brainstorming, if you would like to download one of those mind maps that we showed you in here, click the link down here or on the video, and you can get your own copy of that to include in your own Google Doc. So we will see you guys next time on the Pages Between Us project.
The fact that you're this many videos in shows that you have the dedication and the creativity to see this project through. So take a break, grab a snack, give yourself a pat on the back, and click on the next video. We're so excited to continue to work on this project with you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Unicorns.